Welcome back, U.S. history students. Hope everyone is doing well. We are continuing our material for week 3 today. Yesterday, you guys had an ed puzzle which introduced you to this time period known as the Cold War. Some of this material hopefully should be somewhat of a review from global history last year. But once again, whenever we do talk about topics that you've covered in global, remember we are going to be focusing on them from an American perspective within U.S. history. Okay, so you had the ed puzzle yesterday, which hopefully introduced you to some of these concepts. You have global history, and then we're gonna be learning some new information as well. So our aim today: how can we define the origins and impact of the Cold War? So we're trying to think of the origins. How does this Cold War originate? And then what is the impact of this Cold War? And we're going to look at it from an impact on America, but also we're going to look at the impact on a worldwide level as well. Okay, you guys have the do now provided to you. This is going to be reaching back to material that we covered last week. One slight change, and I want to point this out, is I have included the do now on your handout as well now. I know some people were not doing it. I wanted to provide you with the question so that everyone had it right there on the handout that they're going to be working through. So you can pause the video right now. You can work through that do now, look back at materials if you need assistance. Okay, welcome back. So we're going to start off with our 5 fast facts. And the first 2 are really kind of review facts. Okay, so reaching back to that World War II unit, we're going to focus on how the use of the atomic bombs in Japan ended World War II with victory for the Allies. So this includes the U.S. is victorious in World War II. Okay, we learned about World War II. We focused on the impact on the home front. We talked about the use of the atomic bombs and how this leads to the Japanese surrender in World War II. Okay, following the surrender of Japan, we see that peace efforts are made to try to not just fix things in the short term, but trying to fix things in the long term as well. So we see the creation of the United Nations, and it's established to attempt to maintain worldwide peace. We made that connection to the League of Nations after World War I. That was a failure. The U.S. failed to join that. The U.S. was scared of those long-lasting alliances. The UN is different. The U.S. chooses to join this post-World War II. The UN still exists today. A lot of people argue that it has, to some degree, kind of lived up to its mission. Others have claimed that the UN has kind of failed in stopping worldwide aggression, warfare, violations of human rights. So once again, you see that people argue the positives and negatives of the UN. Okay, now moving to bullets 3. All right, so we see that the Soviet Union and the U.S. are allies in World War II. So they're on the same side in World War II. Though after the war, we see tension develop between the 2 superpowers. And this is a term that we're going to be using a lot in this Cold War unit, this term superpowers. Okay, post-World War II, you really see the United States elevate themselves on a worldwide standing, and also the Soviet Union. So you see these 2 competing nations kind of battling for supremacy, for power in the world post-World War II. Okay, and the reason, the basis for these tensions is political. Okay, and there are 2 different political ideologies that create tension between the United States and the Soviet Union. So the first thing we need to know, the U.S. is a capitalist system, all right? It's also democratic, okay? So we see that the United States is a system based on private ownership, okay? People pursuing business ventures for profit. You see also that people have a voice. They have a vote in the democratic process. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, was communist, okay? Trying to create a system based on equality. Okay, the Soviet Union, you see, is very much government controlled in terms of their industries, in terms of their land ownership. Okay, and these political differences create a lot of tension. And where this tension comes from is you see that the Soviet Union tries to expand their influence in Europe during the 1940s and 1950s. So what you see is it's not just that the Soviet Union is communist that causes issues for America. It's that the Soviet Union is actively trying to convert other areas to communism. And the US sees that as a threat. The US wants capitalist, democratic nations in the world, and they see what the Soviets are doing as a threat to the stability of the worldwide politics and the worldwide economic system. Okay, so we see that this develops into what is known as the Cold War. And one of the most important terms we need to know for the Cold War is the type of foreign policy the US takes, okay? And this is known as containment, the root of the word being contain. The US is going to treat other countries, treat other nations with a focus on trying to contain communism, and we'll look at examples of that today and moving forward. So one slide that I just want to draw your guys' attention to that does a good job kind of comparing, contrasting when you see communism, democracy, capitalism, etc. Um, you see some of the attributes of communism on the left. All right, property ownership by the government, one political party. Okay, a lot of times you see an erasing of freedoms. Freedom of speech is oftentimes limited. Freedom of press is oftentimes limited. All right. And it's trying to create a society that everyone lives under the same conditions. Communism in its ideals, Marx's ideas on communism are very much based on equality. Everyone should have the same. If that actually plays out in society, is a whole nother question. Okay. But the ideals of communism can be seen here. Okay. On the other hand, you see with capitalism, democracy, that people are allowed to own their own businesses. They're allowed to own their own property. All right. People are driven by profit. All right. Elections allow many political parties. There's different political voices that are allowed to have a say in a democratic system. People usually enjoy freedoms. All right. Freedom of speech. We've gone through our amendments, freedom of press, freedom of religion. All right. We do see that a capitalist society, and we talked about this before in the Gilded Age, does differentiate people based on classes. Okay, capitalism does separate people into economic and social classes, and that's one of the arguments against capitalism. Okay, but from a very basic level, we need to understand what the differences of these systems are. Okay, so what you guys are going to be doing today, okay, you have a little bit of a background reading and then a little reading about what is a Cold War. Remember, you guys, we need to follow our steps. First step, we're reading the question. Okay, we're turning the question then into a sentence starter. Okay, then we're going up to the text. So sentence starter is number 2. Then we're going up to the text, underlining, reading, pulling out our answer. Okay, once you get that basic overview, you're then going to be looking at 2 of the first policies the US has in dealing with communism. Okay, these are known as the Marshall Plan, the Truman Doctrine, and these really start the US on a path of using that foreign policy known as containment. Okay, so you guys should be working on that. There's no summary task today, so use the text to help you out. Follow your steps. If you run into any issues, any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Hope everyone is doing well. Talk to you soon.